Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to my studio, everyone. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to be making a very scary painting. How are you guys doing today? We are going to be making a painting of a very famous photograph today. A photograph that purports to be of the Brown Lady of Rame Hall. And this is a photo that was taken 85 years ago tomorrow, on September 19th, 1936, I believe. And it is the most famous ghost photo ever taken. And I'm excited to do something a little bit different on the channel today. So we are going to be making this painting. And last night I made a painting that took me almost 7 hours to do. I'm not going to spend 7 hours today. In fact, I'm going to try to do today's painting in about 2 hours, and I'm going to be using a little bit of a different technique than I've been doing over some of the more recent episodes. So if you're interested, buckle up and get ready for a little bit of a ride. I'm going to tell a few ghost stories. I'm going to specifically tell this ghost story, and if there's some other tales of fright that you want to share in the comments, please let me know. Or if there's other paranormal or tales of the unusual or unsolved mysteries that you can think of that you think we should paint in the future, please let me know, because there is a few other ones coming down the pipeline. We've got the Roswell crash, the UFO what's purportedly a UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico. We're going to be doing Bigfoot next month. And there's a few other ones I just can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, so let's get right to it here. We have a... Let's see. To make today's painting, what we're going to do is... I'm going to share with you a few different outlines I did for the painting, which you can transfer onto a canvas. Now, this is the outline I did based on the photograph. As best as I could, this is the outline here. I also did another one that I've seen other people... I saw another kind of mock-up of this image where somebody tried to recreate it, and some people believe that this image is of like the Virgin Mary. Either the ghost was the Virgin Mary, or that it was faked using a statue of the Virgin Mary. And then here's the version that I am going to paint, which is the actual the woman behind who many believe is the ghost herself. So this is the version I'm going to do, and but again, you have the option of using either of these outlines. And I'll show you where these are in the Dropbox folder. So if you click on a link in the description below, you'll see a bunch of files here. And if you click in, and you can see here's a bunch of other paintings that we've done based on photographs from animals to J.R.R. Tolkien, we have a few other ones coming up here, space related, because that's something that's dear to my heart. If you click in here, the Brown Lady Ghost, you will see all these files here. Essentially, you'll see the 4 images I showed on the screen, plus 3 PDF versions of the outlines, right? So we have 3 outlines, 3 in JPEG, and 3 in PDF. Excuse me. So feel free to download whichever one you prefer. And then I'm going to show you here in a second how to transfer them onto canvas. Maybe before I do that, though, I just want to quickly let you know that there is a private Facebook group just for people who are following along and painting with me and working on today's painting or another painting of your choosing. And it's a great place because what's awesome is this wonderful community of people just like yourself, some who've been painting with me for the past year, because just a few days ago we celebrated our 1-year anniversary of doing these painting lessons twice a week. I haven't missed a single day. In fact, I've done often more, sometimes 3, 4, 5 episodes a week as we've gone on here. So you'll see all of these other images. This is a painting we made on Thursday, and here's Paula's version. Here's cool, she did the little girl that I put in the De Rivera box here. Wow, Gail, awesome. Anyway, once a month we take a look at these images and I give people feedback on how to potentially improve them. Most of the time we're just celebrating people's achievements, because anyone who's taking time out of their day to try to be a little bit more creative is doing the world a great favor. As far as I'm concerned, if everyone was making paintings, we would live in a much more peaceful, much more joyous place. And that's the world I want to live in, so this is my attempt to gently encourage the world to move into a more positive direction. So let's begin here. I'm going to show you how to transfer this image onto a canvas, and I'll talk a little bit over top while it's happening. So let's play this here. So you'll see I'm just using a regular 9x12 sized canvas, and then I'm taking this image which I printed out on my inkjet printer here at home. You can use, I'm using actually a little bit thicker paper, but you could use regular photocopy paper or thinner paper. In fact, the thinner the paper, the easier it is, because then you don't have to press so hard. Because you'll see I break a bunch of pencils pressing hard enough with this process. So I'm just taking this piece of paper and I'm trying to figure out the best place here to put the tape on so that I can remove it easily. And because there's these lines that extend right up through the top of the image, I didn't want to put the tape there because I'm going to eventually move the carbon paper, which you can see there on the right, into position. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that. All of these lines, there is vertical and horizontal lines in this image, but they're all a little bit askew, so I wasn't too worried about getting them straight. Sometimes you've seen me break out the ruler just to try my best to straighten the image, but you could also try in your painting to straighten out some of these lines that aren't quite straight if you want. So I'm just going to speed through this here. You can see me using a ruler just to do a bunch of these lines, and that certainly speeds up the process. And then you saw that I just really quickly traced out the image of the woman herself, and we'll talk about her biography and who she was and the whole story behind the ghosts of Raham Hall here in a few moments. So again, you can see how I just moved the carbon paper up. All right, and there, that's what it looks like, right? We'll peel it off. I keep the these sheets because I let our daughter draw on them afterwards. Okay. Lots of comments in the chat already. So let's get right to it. So as I said, I'm going to keep this for the future. Now, as I said, last night I began a live stream at 4 o'clock here on the West Coast, and I ended about 10:45, long after my wife and daughter had gone to bed. And you know, there was a few people who, I'm trying to remember, maybe it was you, Lolly, someone said that they went to bed in England as I began the stream and then woke up when I was just finishing. And I don't, as fun as it is, to be on that long, I want to try to be a little bit more efficient today, and maybe even going forward, because the process that I used to make yesterday's Diego Rivera painting is a very traditional way of working, and working in many layers upon layers, using a lot of glazing fluid. And it is a very effective, it's a great way to make a painting that looks really good. Yesterday's painting, I'm very happy with it, but not everybody has 7 hours or more to spend on a painting. So what I'm going to try to do is do this in 2 hours. So to do that, I'm going to do take a few different approaches than what I normally do. Now, I'm still going to put a color on here to get started, but I think instead of putting the yellow that I often put down, I'm going to put a slightly modified one here. Maybe a yellow, but with a few, like basically kind of like a yellowish gray, I think, is the way that I want to approach that. Just because... first of all, because today's painting is a black and white painting anyway, so having a really vibrant, warm yellow underneath everything there's no real point to it, right? Because it's not like we're trying to have a warm glow coming out of a black and white image. Now, well, actually, I should say today's painting is not going to be totally black and white. It'll be more like a sepia image, which is, sepia is, you've probably seen sepia as a filter on your Instagram or something. Sepia is this kind of aged old photograph look, and it's got a kind of a brownish quality. So I'm going to put that in the image. Now I'm also, you can see I'm putting down some of these warm colors here, because I'm going to use these to make my brown, and I might use a little bit of this brown elsewhere in the painting as well. So we're mostly going to use black and white. Now again, I've said in the past, I think it's a great idea to mix your own grays, because then you learn a little bit more about color mixing. But, and also to speed up today's painting, I think I'm just going to go right to black and white. So I'm going to put these colors on the palette here. So you know, in a way, what's kind of nice about having done that really long episode last night, and it kind of coincides perfectly with today's episode being black and white, is I can think to myself, oh, okay, well, let's, this is a good excuse to do to take a different approach. So I'm just going to put the labels for the 3 colors I have here on. So I've got my warm blue, warm red, and warm yellow, some white and black. I'm going to use a lot of white today. And so let's mix up a color for our background. And I'm just going to do this on this painting, or this palette here. Let's put some warm yellow, a little bit of warm red, and warm blue. Get this kind of nice brownish color, which this is a great color, and we could use some of this kind of dark brown at some point in the painting, but I'm going to, maybe I'll just put some white directly into it. Now we want to just sort of think about, if we put a lot of white in here, we run the danger of covering up our background. the pencil lines that we put in there. So I'm going to put that white there, and then I've got some water that I'm going to dilute this all with. Okay. And yeah, I'll use this big brush here. So there's a good amount of water in here. I'm just going to use a fairly thin coat. Okay. One thing I notice is the thinner the coat, or another, maybe the more water you put in this kind of wash, often the streakier the painting looks. It's a little bit harder to get a streak-free painting when there's a lot of water in it. And that's just because when you have more paint on there, it's going to create a little bit more of a unified surface. And there's just more pigment to cover all of this area. So this is a little bit different than what I normally do. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe some of this excess pigment off. And then I'll blow dry it. So this already this basically looks like a sepia photograph right now here, right? This is your typical sepia hue. So this is often, probably the younger generation of people, when you hear sepia, they think like, oh, you mean like the filter, the Instagram filter. And then the older generation is like, what is Instagram? So, it is. I find it really fascinating how, older technology lives on today through, like filters, for instance. Like people using these filters that give photos, like people who are in their teens right now who use filters that emulate photographs taken in the 60s and 70s with the kind of Kodachrome look. People who don't even know what Kodachrome is, don't even know that Kodak, what is Kodak? What is a Kodak moment? What is a film? So, wow, lots of questions. Lolly says, hi everyone, can't imagine how you're going to paint this one. Paul says, the time you posted is 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Good, my phone called me up. You moved 1 hour. Yes, I was going to start painting. My wife went and got her hair done, and it can be a long process, so I thought, well, let's schedule this as late as possible. And then she got home early, so I thought, you know what? Let's start the episode a little bit earlier so we can get going. Okay. Lolly says, I don't have Facebook, but I'm tempted to join up solely to join your group. It looks really cool. Have you recovered from your 7-hour painting session yesterday? Yeah, I think pretty good. I woke up this morning and crawled out of bed and went and got a massage in the morning, which was awesome. I have a massage therapist I see every couple of weeks because I gotten a really bad bicycle accident. I was hit head on by a car and broke my right shoulder and elbow, and that was so having someone help get more mobility back in my body has been really, really helpful. Although my massage therapist, you know, I tell people I'm getting a massage, like, wow, you're lucky. Like, my massage therapist is he's like a taskmaster. It's like, and like, to massage my shoulders, he's like grinding in on my abs. It's so painful. Okay, so there's more questions here, but let's get right to today's painting. So I've got this foundational wash here. This is traditionally called an Imprematura, the first layer. And, you know, artists from the Renaissance to today have been using a layer like this to get their painting started. Now, as I said, often I begin the episode by using a color like this, but I think for today's painting, this might be a little bit more appropriate. So I've already put some paints on the palette. It's still kind of wet, so maybe let's take a moment while that's still a little bit wet just to kind of look at the history of today's famous photograph, right? Just as a reminder, this is the image that we're going to be painting. So this photograph is, and the phenomenon is known as the Brown Lady of Ram Hall, and Ram Hall is this. Let me see if there's a photograph of it here. Is this giant building, an old mansion essentially in Norfolk, England, which is in kind of mid-east of England, kind of probably a couple hours northeast of London. And, you know, the way I would think of this building is, you've ever seen Downton Abbey, that's sort of like the kind of structure you're talking about. This building was owned by a very powerful political figure and family, the Townsend family in England, and the husband was married to this woman here, Lady Dorothy Walpole. And Lady Dorothy Walpole happened to be the sister of Robert Walpole, is considered to be the first Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, or of Great Britain, sorry. And so she was, you know, grew up in a very powerful circle of people in England, and it is sort of, according to legend, it's believed that her husband was convinced that she was cheating on him and locked her up inside this house for, I'm not exactly sure how long she was locked up in there, and then potentially had a fake funeral for her, and continued to have her locked up for years afterwards. And who knows what happened to her while she was locked up. Maybe she was tortured or buried alive, or, you know, so there's all sorts of, the legend continues from there. It's also believed that maybe it was the wife of the man that she was having an affair with who locked her into the house. You know, I've been doing a lot of reading about this, and it's interesting how the story just keeps kind of, it's like a fishtail, keeps getting bigger and weirder as we go. But just as a quick little aside here, we'll talk about some of the sightings, I think, as we go. But the photograph was photographed by this photographer, Captain Hubert C. Provand, a photographer that was working for a magazine called Country Life. And he went there with his assistant, and they were taking photographs documenting this beautiful old building for the magazine. You know, just like an architecture type of magazine. And they were photographing the grand staircase in the center, and it was with one of those big old cameras, you know, that you throw the blanket over, and There's a big plate that goes in and out. You can still use cameras like this, like they're what's the name of that type of a camera? Is it 3/4? Anyway, so the photographer's underneath the blanket focusing, and the assistant is usually out front, and at a specific time takes the lens cap off. Anyway, the assistant is standing there and sees, oh, what's that coming down the staircase? This glowing form, and tells the photographer, let's take a picture. Takes the lens cap off, which exposes the plate to light, quickly puts it back on, and the photographer takes the blanket. Is like, what happened? What's going on? And the assistant says, I just saw this ghost coming down the stairs. Hopefully we captured it on film. They go back to the studio to develop the film, and the rest is history. We see this image on the plate. So there has been some discussion over the past 85 years. Again, tomorrow is the 85th anniversary of this photograph. There's some people who believe that this is a genuine article, the first authentic proof of ghosts, and there's some people who have examined the photograph and believe it was either a double image, that there was some light that leaked in onto the plate, or that it was deliberately hoaxed, and that this was a setup with some kind of either a person running down the stairs with a blanket and a very short double exposure, or someone holding a figurine of the Virgin Mary, etc. So lots of speculation as to how this image could have been produced. So, is this dry? Looks like it's almost dry. I think dry enough that we can get started. So, the way that I'm going to paint today's painting is that I'm going to basically paint the colors directly on here. So I'm going to be mixing some grays and potentially a little bit of brown throughout, but mostly gray, and then I can always glaze some brown back over top if I want. Yeah, so why don't we just get started, and rather than me explaining what I'm going to do, we'll just kind of do it. So let's take a medium. Actually, let's mix up I'm going to mix up a... Remember, I've talked about a local color many times before, and local color being, like, what's another example of something, like this plant, right? So if I was going to say, let's paint this plant, the local color would be, I would try to make a green that would look like the overall green in this plant, and the black. Maybe if you could consider this black or a dark blue, I would sort of mix one color and then paint that, and then I can kind of brighten and darken to get highlights and shadows. So the same sort of thing I'm going to do here. I'm just going to mix a batch of kind of mid-value gray. And then I'm going to modify this, making it brighter and darker by adding more white or more black as we go here. It's generally easier to go, well, it's not generally, it is easier to go darker with grays than it is to lighten your gray. So I'm just going to mix this up here. And I think I'm going to start in the center. So I've got this gray, that's nice. Or I was going to start in the center. Maybe should I work my way to it? I don't know, let's think about it. Maybe let's put this here. Let's mix a brown now. Kind of like what we did before. So let's take this warm yellow. Oh shoot, you can't even see what I'm doing. My apologies. So anyway, that was gray's pretty straightforward. I'm taking some warm yellow and warm red. In fact, let's just make a bigger batch of this as well. So I can add some brown to my grays as needed if I want. So one of the secrets of doing the technique that we're about to embark on is you want to have, we're going to use maybe more paint than I normally use, because rather than doing very thin, like multiple layers of very thin colors, we're going to be doing maybe one layer of thick paint. And that means we don't have to worry about, you know, little bits of color coming through, or we might worry a bit, but if we're putting enough paint on there, it should be covered pretty well. Okay, so I mean, one way that you could do this, if I was to use the previous method, what I would probably do is basically paint the staircase first in black and white, and then I would glaze the figure over top with a light brown. Instead, today I'm going to paint this figure sort of all in one go, which is a little bit, frankly, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's going to go, and hopefully it's going to go faster. In fact, I'm going to set a timer for myself so that I can keep on track here. So what did I say? Let's go, I'm going to say, can I do this figure in 30 minutes? We'll see, that's pushing it, but okay. So I'm going to take some white and some of this gray, even a little bit of brown. And then let's look at these side by side. Maybe let's zoom in as well. So if I look at this image, trying to paint what is there is going to be a little tricky. So how about I might just zoom in on my image, just so that it might just kind of help me see where the face and stuff should be. Okay. So I'm starting out with this kind of mid-range gray because I'm not exactly sure. I think I'll probably brighten up the figure as we go here a bit. So I'm kind of just kind of going to outline her a little bit. A few things with this particular ghost is that many of the people that claim to have seen this ghost say that her eyes are empty, that there's like empty eye sockets, and that she has a like kind of scary grimace, you know, that maybe it's because she was locked inside this building for weeks or years, decades, maybe. And she is trying to find her husband to get retribution on him. So from most of what everything that I've read, this is not a happy ghost. This is not a ghost that is you know, this is a ghost that is trapped here and terrorizing people. Okay, so again, it's going to be a little bit different than the original photograph here on the left. Although, you know, once I start going here, I can really decide to either refine this and get more detail, or I could decide to like kind of blur it out and get something closer to this type of a situation. So I'm just going to back out. And let's look at the photograph all the way. And I'm taking just this gray, and I'm going to take the gray and I'm just going to put these kind of on the stairs in behind here. See, I'm sort of leaving a little gap, and that's where I'll put some black in there shortly. Now I could do the opposite, which is to put, maybe I'll do it on I'll do it, oh yeah, let's do this on one side, and then on the other side I'll show the kind of the opposite technique here. And then you can use whichever one suits you. So how about I'll just stop here. Now I'm going to take some black and kind of just darken this gray. I'm not going to go full black. I'll save my full-on black for a little bit later. So one thing using this particular method is we're going to get more, since we're painting wet paint onto wet paint, the paint will kind of blend a little bit, which is, some people love that, some people don't love that. If you're doing this, then you can kind of blend the paint out a little bit more. It can be much harder though to get nice kind of clear lines, right? So here's those lines. Let's do the opposite on the other side, which is going to be mostly the same. But the thing is that the one danger of putting a darker color and then a lighter color is that this dark color has the possibility of getting into the lighter color and darkening it a little bit. Now there is obviously some lines inside here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I just want to sort of get the basics completed here. So let's now go do the stairs again. So this is, you know, in a way this will have a bit more of a impressionist feel, I suppose you could say, than a more realistic kind of feel, that because we can kind of bring it back towards a level of realism after we do all of this, but it's because it's going to be a little bit thicker, we'll still see lots of texture of the paint throughout all of the layers. So can you see the difference between these two? You know, here I have, you know, I did the gray and then put black lines over top, versus here I put the black lines first and then put the gray over top of the black lines. So because these black lines are much thinner and there's less paint, they're almost dry by the time I got around to putting the gray there. So there's very little of the gray, or sorry, the black being blended into this gray. Versus on the other hand, the gray was relatively thick, and then I'm painting the black into it, which means that the black picked up or a lot of that gray, and it kind of, they blurred together. So here I have stronger, more visible dark lines, whereas these lines have been sort of subdued a little bit. And I think it's really important for you to see the difference here, because if you see that, then we can use that going forward in our painting. So if you think to yourself, well, I need some really distinctive lines, right? Maybe it's a good idea to paint some of those first, and you could, let's say we could paint the whole painting with black lines first, and then just sort of paint in and around those lines. But some other people will appreciate this kind of technique more, in that the lines are a little, there's a tendency for them to kind of be a little softer, and we can kind of blend them in. So again, so in fact, as I think about it, which one, I think I'm going to do the rest of the stairs at least with the putting in this gray, and then I will do the black lines. I'll probably go back over top of the black lines anyway, at least in certain places, to bring them back out, because they're if they got a little bit faded in some places. Of course, one of the benefits of doing this side is you can put those black lines in pretty, like, you can be very sloppy with them and make big wide lines, and then by painting over top with a bit of a wider brush, you can really kind of thin them out and make them a little bit cleaner. So it's totally up to you, but I think it's kind of fun just to use a very different painting method than I've used for a while. We've done some of this type of painting before, you know, when we've painted some of the Impressionists, when we painted, what have we painted using a style like this? Well, when we've done some of the palette knife stuff, like the Anna Mulka Ahmed painting, we did the University of Punjab and Sufi Wakar. Again, we did that maybe, I don't know how long ago we did. Everything kind of blurs, but it was about a month ago. We used kind of a fairly, you know, we were putting very thick paint onto the palette. Now, because you can see it's now, this is almost like a third version here, because as I'm putting this black on, it's I use this process down here, but because there's so much more room to paint in, a bunch of it is already dried. All right, but I can go back in right here. Not that I should probably just leave it because I don't mind that there, but... And you can see from the original image, we're going to get darker and darker as we go, but I'm going to do that maybe a little bit later. I just want to get the basic architecture in place here. Okay. Let's just keep on going here. Let's do... Actually, I'm going to paint... I will paint a little bit more of the architecture here. Now, I'm using just black. You know, if this image is going to get pretty dark as I go, so that's why I'm just going right to black here with outlines. But if I was doing another image, and I think I'm going to use this technique I'm doing now for a number of upcoming episodes, because I feel like I've done the little bit more. I've done a lot of the very traditional painting method recently. And kind of, I feel like I've, for anyone who's really interested in painting in that style, there's like maybe 80 videos I've done already that utilize it, so it'd be kind of fun to show kind of some different tricks, I guess, right? So rather than moving on to this side, I'm just going to start putting in the same gray right here. And even though I've obliterated some of those lines, that's okay. Because I'll probably see a little bit of them coming through. So for some people, will you know, they love this technique. You know, some of the people that have been following me for the past year will be like, "Oh, great! Finally, this is something, you know, really. You know, this is there's more freedom. This is something a little bit wilder about painting this way." And I could see some people being like, "Oh, I like the little bit more structure of the previous style you're using." So it's... I mean, it's the kind of thing where I almost feel like, you know, what would be kind of interesting to do is... I've said this a few times, so eventually I will do it, is to take the same painting and paint it like 5 different ways, so that people can really see, oh, okay, here's a very traditional approach, here's maybe a impressionist approach, here's a more modern approach, Fauvist or something. So another thing I could be doing as well, which would slow it down a little bit, is I could be actually mixing these grays and getting more range of subtlety. But I'm just going to build this up, and then I'm going to go over and start darkening things down a little bit. But this will really help just catapult me forward in this whole process. So I'd be really interested to hear in the comments there, like what's your preferred way of working? Is it a slower, more methodical, more traditional way, like that we use, like, you know, even painting Diego Rivera? Or do you like a bit more of a looser style, like we used for maybe Tom Thompson? Even Van Gogh, Van Gogh, like the Potato Eaters, we did a relatively traditional process, but by the time we got to his self-portrait, we were using a kind of his version of Impressionism. Or you see how kind of, like, I'm just racing through here, right? Like, I began this painting 20 minutes ago. So I still have 8.5 minutes on my 30-minute timer, right? I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking maybe today's the day I do this painting a few different ways. If I get this painting done sooner than later. And then the other person be like, whatever you're thinking right now, stop it. Have dinner with your wife. This will actually be interesting. On Tuesday, for International Peace Day, we were painting 2 versions of a dove that Pablo Picasso created. And those ones, those will go fairly fast, at least depending on how you want to do them, because the images that we're painting are basically line drawings he did on paper for there. I think one of them was a drawing on paper and one was a lithograph print or an etching. But of course, you're certainly welcome to take the original and to play with it as much as you like. Okay, so I'm going to take this same gray. Actually, let's darken it down, because I mean I could have darkened this down here. Maybe I'll go over that, but we'll see here. So I'll take my black. Let's take our gray. Put the black into the gray here. Especially for this area here. Yeah, this gets really dark here, so so I'm sort of doing a little bit of articulating of some of these architectural elements in here, because while a photograph can kind of get away with being a little bit obscure, we're generally less tolerant of paintings like that, because it's just like, oh, it looks like the artist wasn't skilled enough, and just sort of it just turns into a blob. So I want to try to get a little bit more definition, and I can glaze this and darken it. I'm also using a pretty big brush for all of this. I think this is a doorway up here. So, and then this back area here, a little bit more, let's go a bit lighter, I think. I mean, I kind of like the roughness of the way that I'm painting it. So, you know, questions in my mind as I'm doing this is like, well, do I actually want to, like, could I be done in 20 minutes from now? Like, is it possible that I could just leave the painting really, really rough? Like, with, like, basically, let's just imagine that this area is just done. Could I walk away from the painting at that stage and be happy? I think I could. I think I'm gonna do a little bit more work on it. I don't think I'll leave it there, but just sort of letting you know that that is a possibility. That you could, you know, you can call your painting done whenever you want. Okay. So that was my 30-minute timer. So here we've got everything in here in about 30 minutes, which is actually faster than I thought. I was just gonna spend 30 minutes down here, but I sort of was like, you know, let's just expand outwards. Okay. So now I'm just going to go back over a few things with a little bit of a darker line, and as I paint, like, I'm picking up some other grays. So I start with a black, and by the time I get down here, that black is sort of transitioned into a little bit of a lighter color. Okay. Lori says, I would love to see you do the same painting in different styles. I've thought of doing that, but not sure I could pull off the styles, so it'd be a great learning experience. Okay. John says, battery's dying, we'll come back later. And Lori says, but don't do all the different styles all in one night. Yeah, maybe, I've got the schedule, the schedule for this class is pretty packed with things that I already have got planned on doing, and my life is pretty busy right now. But I think in January might not be for a little bit before I can do it. But if the will is there, then let's do it. So yeah. Let's do her body in here. So let's again set another 30-minute timer here. Oops. So this time, actually, let's take most of this white out of here, because we're going to be using much more subtle value shifts in the white. So in my mind, I'm just thinking, what if we just do these stairs? Maybe I should outline the stairs first, a little bit darker. Yeah, I'm just gonna go to basically the color I did with the stairs themselves. Like this color, I'm gonna use to do these lines. Okay. So I'm painting the stairs with these horizontal brush strokes. to emphasize the horizontal nature of the faces of those stairs. And then I'll contrast that with more vertical and curving lines for her body. Okay, it's tea time. So, what should... So, yeah, again, it is a real trick to think how refined do I want to make this painting? Because I could, part of me really likes the roughness of this a lot, especially after doing a fairly refined painting yesterday. I think like, oh wow, this is like a lot of fun to just sort of break out and so right now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get some of the highlights that we see in the photograph. And maybe where I would expect to see some highlights that maybe aren't necessarily in the photo, but maybe should be there, which is one of the reasons that some people think this is a hoax, because we're not seeing reflections in certain places. If this thing was glowing and moving down the stairs, then maybe we would see more light being reflected, let's say, on this side of the, on either side of the stairs and around the stairs. So in the interest for me of just making my painting a little bit more believable, I guess, I am kind of adding what is not there, but to a certain extent. Also, I should say, one of the things that I'm doing, you might see, is I'm holding my paintbrush kind of far away from the tip. I'm not doing little tiny fine movements like this, or even like this. I've painted most of this painting with my hand much further away, which, you know, maybe is a little bit more of an advanced thing, what it does is it will invariably cause a little bit more of a wobbly line, a little bit less precision. But this is certainly much closer to the way like the Impressionists painted. Impressionist painters often had like really long paintbrushes. If you see photographs of Monet's paintbrushes, you know, some of them are like, you know, I feel like I'm telling fish stories. Well, as this today's episode goes on, Monet's paintbrushes were this big. But in order so that he could kind of stand a little bit further away from the canvas and be kind of painting it like this, or another way of, let's see. I mean, I have some long paintbrushes. You know, so that you could be kind of standing, painting little things like this, and that way you're seeing the entire painting all at once, rather than painting with your nose right up close to it. And yes, you're going to get a little bit less precision, but you're also seeing the whole painting develop all at once, so you could see how every single brushstroke fits in with the overall composition. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the way it looks. Like I could make an argument to myself just to walk away right now, but I think I want to do a little bit of. I'm going to take this brown that I made earlier. Let's put that down here. Oh, there's some white. Here's. So I can kind of cheat a little bit with, rather than doing the whole thing in black and white, take a bit of this brown and paint her with this brown we made at the beginning. And that will help separate it from the gray in the and around. So again, I'm going to go right to here, and let's zoom in. As I'm doing this, I kind of like the, rather than putting vertical lines, I'm starting to like, you know what, I kind of like these a little bit more of, so I'm going to kind of go back over. I don't want it to be too defined, right? So I'm also going to put these lines going in the same direction as these horizontal lines. It's just like a total style, like purely stylistic choice here, but kind of digging the way it looks, so maybe I'll do a lot of the painting this way. I don't know. It's the, you know, it's just, that's just sort of how the painting process works. Sometimes you just stumble into things and you go, huh, I don't know, maybe that's the solution I'm looking for. So I don't know if I'm gone too far with this brown. We'll see. I can always do a kind of a big glaze and kind of just brighten everything with white right in the middle. Thinking about it. Let's do some darker grays. Maybe, actually, you know what? I'm gonna kind of tighten up some line work. Because I'm gonna get, this is all gonna start getting really dark around these edges. I think I'll do it as a glaze, really dark glaze. It's an hour and a half into the painting. Yeah, so I'm just tightening up a bunch of lines. I don't want to spend too long on this. And I'm keeping the relatively loose quality intact. Yeah, I think what I'm going to finish with these lines, which will take me probably another 5 minutes. And then I'm going to really significantly start darkening the sides so that the ghost in the center kind of glows. Wow, what was that? Was that thunder clouds? My studio's in the basement, so sometimes it's just my wife and daughter jumping on the furniture. And sometimes it is a storm. Again, look where I'm holding my paintbrush. Up and high. almost ready here to move on to the next step. Now, I don't know if this is exactly what these stairs look like. This is just sort of my interpretation, looking at the photograph, trying to figure out what this space is right over here. Okay. John says, hello, a ghost. Jillian says, I've enjoyed watching, but I have to be up in a couple of hours, so good night, everyone. Get some sleep, Jillian. My goodness. So, you know, yeah, right now I'm at a bit of a crossroads. Because I really like a lot of what's happening here. Actually, you know, I like the background a lot. The ghost itself needs more work. That's not an issue. I'm planning on doing more work there. The background I'm really happy with. I am going to darken it, but it's almost a little bit of... Part of me is like, a bit of a shame. Because I kind of want to keep it like that, but... One of the things that I tell my students, which I'm going to live by here myself, is if you can do this once, you can do it again. And what I've spent about an hour and 15 minutes, and I've painted this entire painting, right? So if I really wanted an hour and 15 minutes, I could recreate this painting. I probably could recreate it faster now that I know what I was doing. Because I always give the example of, if you were writing an email, I'm sure this happened to almost everybody, right? You're writing an email to a friend or an angry message to your boss or something, and you're writing it, and you're parsing the words and changing, rearranging sentences, rereading it, and just trying to get it perfect. And then something happens, and the email just disappears. And you try to find it, like, oh no, what happened? And it's either your computer shut off, or the battery died, or there's a glitch, or sometimes just the computer wizards do something, and like, it's gone. I gotta rewrite it again. I was gonna go to sleep, or I was gonna go to the gym or whatever. Like, but I gotta get this done. So you just open up your laptop or whatever, and then you write it out. The first time it took you an hour and a half to write it. The second time you write it in like 15 minutes, because you've already figured out what you wanted to say. Maybe you're like, there was a couple of, how did I word that? It was so great. I can't. But you just sort of like, okay, well, I know the gist of it. It was an angry letter to my boss. I've taken out all the personal stuff that in my first draft that was going to get me fired. So now I know, okay. And then you could do it like in a quarter of the time, maybe, right? And I feel the exact same way with the painting. In fact, even I was looking at the Diego Rivera that took me 7 hours to paint last night. I was looking at it and thinking, Man, if I was to paint that again, I bet you I could do that in about 3 hours. Because I had to take the original painting, which is a life-size mural, break it down into a much smaller canvas, and in that process I was taking out a whole bunch of details. Like the easiest things, there were some things in his pockets in the small Diego Rivera as a child. He had like a frog and a snake. I took all those things out, and in that process, that took me a long time to figure out what needed absolutely to be here. Doing it again, especially if I used the original one I had side by side, I could do it in, I'm sure, half the time. So again, what I'm just saying is I really like the painting right now, but I'm gonna continue on. I'm gonna radically darken around here, because if we look at this photograph, you know, these areas are so black that we can't even see what information is here. Now, I'm probably not going to go totally black in these areas. I want to keep some detail, but by darkening it, I think, like, I'm basically going to kind of darken around here and have her glowing form in the center, and I'll do the opposite, take some white and brighten this back up. So let's just get right to it then. So I've got some black right here on my palette. Black is like such a dominant color that I'm not going to need much of it to do what I want to do, right? So we'll start out a little bit slower. So we'll get this black on here and get glazing fluid on, and gives you an idea how thick it is. I think let's put even more glazing fluid in there. So my ratio of like black to glazing fluid is like 5:1 glazing fluid at least, maybe. And I'm just really kind of massaging it in here because I'd like it to be relatively consistent, right? I'd like to have mostly glazing, or I don't want to have like one brush stroke that's all black, one brush stroke that's mostly glazing fluid, and that will drive me nuts. So let's take this and just start going over parts of the painting here. And I'm going to kind of go in sections, because the glazing fluid will start drying pretty quickly, and if I just start going all over everything, it's going to turn into a bit of a mess. Alright, so I'm sort of just painting the wall. I'm just darkening that wall down. Maybe I shouldn't quite have gone so dark right behind her head, but let's just finish that up. And then down here underneath the stairs, this is, I might even at some point, we'll see, I could just go all black down here. I'm not sure just yet. So here on this side, unlike the photograph, which is pitch black here, I'm going to kind of just let it brighten up a bit. Just kind of show her glowing body casting light over here. So we take that. I'm going to take my blending brush, my mop brush, and just smooth out. You know what I should have, I just realized, I remember seeing this, there was a blob of black paint there. I should have blow dried this. So I'm just going to erase that. same thing. I'm going to let this get a little brighter there. Let's just darken on the stairs a little bit. And now I'm concerned with this mop brush, so I'm just trying to get that black that I blended there. Okay. I'm going to put more glazing fluid on here. Let me zoom out a bit. So this bottom step isn't going to really have much light because that light is coming sort of from behind it. Okay, that's definitely thunder. I don't know if you can hear that on camera. That was loud. Okay. My wife and daughter just left to the park about 20 minutes ago, so they're probably like rushing back home right now. Okay. So, I like this so far. I haven't done any kind of blending with the mopping brush because there's some black that was still wet, so I'm going to blow dry this just to sort of help seal everything in so that when I do some blending in a few minutes, I'm not going to have that same sort of thing happen to me again. So I'm just going to mute the microphone for probably about I hear my wife just came back, so I'm sure they probably got to the park. Thunder started happening, like, okay, we're heading home. I'm also going to put a glow... Well, we'll see. I mean, it could be enough to do this with black. But I think if we really want a nice like glow, we'll have to get some white in there. Okay, so I'm just going to continue darkening this painting. My only fear at this point is that the electricity could short out, or the internet might cut off, so... Which would be appropriate for a ghost picture, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm gonna pause here, blow dry everything. And then maybe I'll do one more layer of darkening, and then we'll brighten it up, and then maybe I'll darken the sides again. So we'll see here. Okay, so let's I'm just gonna do another layer of dark here. Let's just Like, this is way easier to do than if I had tried to mix slightly different versions of black, like different shades. Like, it would just, I would have lost my mind, because it would be so hard to get this level of subtlety, which with a bit of glazing fluid is fairly easy. I just put a little bit glazing fluid in there, and then I can really get very fine ratios of a little bit darker and darker. Okay. That's pretty good. I could see getting even darker, but I think what I want to do now is I want to do some white glaze right over top of the ghost in the middle, and just see how that goes, and kind of just gently kind of blend it out a little bit. Yeah. The only thing that I have to be concerned about is my mop brush, that this is nice and dry, because I don't want to be taking this and then trying to delicately blend out the whites, and there's black or gray on here. So I'm just, like, ideally you would have 2 or 3 or 10 mop brushes like this. This one I ordered off of Amazon. I'm pretty sure I put it in the description below. I think it was like $10, $8, 15 bucks somewhere. But I find, like, art supplies on Amazon, the prices fluctuate pretty wildly. Sometimes things are I find Amazon for art supplies is, except for the canvases, tends to be more expensive than your art supply store. So so you can look at the link, click on the links below, take a look at the actual products I'm recommending, and then before you click buy, maybe just, you know, write down those details and go to your local art supply store and see what the prices are there. Okay, so I'm going to blow dry this one more time, and then we're going to transition to white and do the opposite. Okay, still a few little bits that are wet around the edges, but I won't be touching those for a while anyway, so let's take some of this white. There might be a little bit of brown in there, but that might be actually totally fine. So let's take some of this here. So as I've mentioned many times before, but when you're glazing with white, it can be kind of tricky because obviously the glazing fluid up here is white, and I'm using white paint. So there's another half hour. So that's an hour and a half since I began painting, right? So I'm going to take this and get mostly... Actually, let's start here. You don't really know what you got until the end. As I've mentioned before, often at the end of a painting session, I'll just take, I have these like, I get these from the dollar store for like $4 for $1 or something. And sometimes I'll just take the extra paint I have left on my palette, rather than just washing it down the sink or using a rag and scraping it off and putting it into the garbage. I'll just brush them onto these surfaces. And what that allows me to do is to kind of take my paintbrush and just test it. Now, I could blow dry this and see how dark that actually goes. I'm pretty confident I got a good mixture, but let's just... I'm going to take this and just brush it right over top of her to start. So some of this, the brown things that I painted are kind of disappearing a little bit. I don't mind that at all. I was kind of thinking that when I was painting it, is thinking, okay, if I glaze over top of this, some of that brown will kind of be lost, which is fine, because I don't want it to be just, it is the brown lady, but I want to keep that brown a little bit more on the subtle side. Right now, I have lost a lot of detail this way. If I look at the original, that's pretty intense. I'm probably going to go back after I kind of give her a little bit of a halo-y kind of quality, and put some detail back into her. And I may even bring some of the stairs back in there with a really light glaze to give her that transparency again. Because the danger is it gets so opaque that now she becomes this solid white object floating here, and we don't see that she's, it's supposed to be a ghost, it's supposed to be a little bit transparent, right? So I'm going to blow dry this because I just wanted to test that out on her body, and then next one I'm going to go kind of blend her outward. So I'm going to mute this for about... Okay, so I'm just going to add more glazing fluid to my palette. I find if you're going to do any kind of blending with glazing fluid, it's really helpful to have fairly fresh glazing fluid. because it starts to get tacky pretty quickly as soon as it gets out of that bottle. Okay, so I got my blending brush kind of handy. Where should we start? Let's start. I always kind of start somewhere that is relatively safe, right? Kind of right underneath your armpit there. Okay, things have started to dry a little bit. I kind of got a little cocky up there, as I often do. So, and every time I do that, the painting always reminds me, humbles me. So let's blow dry this, and I'll touch that up. Okay, I'm gonna blow dry this again. Oy. The app just crashed here. Come on. So eventually, what I'll do, I'm going to get the central part, and then I'm going to do a little bit of reflected light on some of these side areas. If you're interested in hearing a really well done reading of some of this story, I put a link in the description below to a YouTube video of two people who are talking about this whole the brown lady, and it was pretty fascinating. They do a really good job of sort of talking about some of the most famous kind of incidents. I'm gonna blow dry that again. Just gotta take my time. So if you make a little ooey or whatever with your glazing, you do a little bit, blow dry it, do a little bit more, blow dry it. You just take some paper. Okay, I don't like how that hard edge up there, but I'll tackle that later. Let's now do a little bit of reflected light. On the wall. Okay. So, I got frustrated and I just decided to try some of this over again. So I'm gonna just fix my mistakes. I don't know if if this is a little fool's errand that I just embarked on here, but I didn't like how rigid that line was I created around like the head, so I just wiped it off. I ended up wiping off way too much paint, because really everything is still in the midst of drying, even though I'm blow drying it. Excuse me. It's going to take a couple days for all of that acrylic to completely 100% dry. So, I sort of tried to wipe as much off, and then I went in with some paint, just painted it back out, and then I'll glaze some white back over in this area. I'm just going to blow dry it all now. Let's try this glaze again. Now I think I'm gonna put some fresh glaze down. I think what's happening is I just had too much actual white on my brush. So let's just go a little bit more subtle. So I clean the brush off. Let's get as much moisture off that brush. And get mostly glazing fluid. And then let's try a bit of the paint with glazing fluid in there. All right, so that's super, super subtle. Barely did anything, but again, I'm going to blow dry that and then do it again. Up my ratio. Okay. So let's get a bit more paint on here. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll blow dry that. I'm just going to do a little bit, I think probably one more pass, and hopefully I'll I don't know what it is with me, but it's like one of these things where I'll test in a area off to the side until I can get it right, and then so I build up confidence to be able to do a part of the painting like this, and then by the time I get to the part that I want to do, I'm almost like overconfident, and then I go too quickly or too much glaze. Anyway, almost there. I'm just gonna blow dry it, and then I just touch up here, and then I've kind of fixed that area that was a colossal problem 15 minutes ago, right? Almost. That is one stubborn little area of this painting. And again, it's like when you're using the glazing fluid, if you do a little bit, you gotta just... I've learned my lesson. Like I actually haven't learned my lesson because you can see I keep doing it. Is you get a little bit done, back off, blow dry it, then touch it up again, because you pretty much got like 2 quick little brush strokes before additional brush strokes start kind of pulling that paint off. I think I'm just going to go for a slightly different tact here, which is take a smaller brush. There we go. There we go. Okay. So now, now that I got that sorted out, what I want to do what do I want to do now? Like, how much more do I want to do? I guess. I think I'm gonna do a little bit. Put some brown maybe back into her eyes, because that's one of the trademark things with this. This Phantom. These empty eye sockets. Now, if I just zoom in here, kind of looks like she's got this big, wild smile. I don't mind that. Wasn't my intention, so I might just... Okay. I'm gonna look. You know, I'm trying to remember this image. I think I have it on my laptop, which is upstairs. The original one, actually, I flipped it. How much detail do I want to do in here? Okay, forgive me a moment, because I'm going to... Let's clean these brushes. Let's see if I can find this painting of her. So that's the original. This is the person that is believed to be the ghost that haunts Rayham Hall. Yeah, Deborah says this has to go up on your wall during Halloween. Getting rid of the wide smile is a good idea for it. Looked more like a pumpkin. Now it looks a little bit better. Good. So. Let's just see here if we just like I might, this arm here I had much darker, but I think I might lighten this up. Actually, I'm going to brighten up her skin. And then make her clothing a little bit more brown, and then I might glaze back over the clothing. So the reason why she's called the Brown Lady is because her clothing looked brown and aged, especially to generations that lived long after she died, right? They were like, wow, who's this woman who's walking towards us, who's wearing this such, like, it's almost like a costume, like a Halloween costume. Why? And then as it gets closer, that's not somebody wearing a Halloween costume. That's someone who used to live here 200 years ago. So I'm just trying to describe a little bit of her chest up here. Again, I'm going to glaze over this just like I did before, and it'll lighten up, and a lot of that will almost disappear, but and my plan is to be done here in about 15 minutes, so if you're watching the clock, okay, so now I've done that. I think I'm just going to do the opposite here and take a bit of my black glaze from before. In fact, maybe I'll just put a bit more back on here. Oops. And very lightly just bring some of these lines back. Yikes. I gotta blow dry some of this wet paint here. Okay. So I really like where this painting is right now. I'm just now going to hopefully that's all dry enough. Maybe actually I was painting. I'm just going to one more quick. Okay, and then hopefully here, just as we get very close to being done, as I said, you should watch the great YouTube video I put in the description. It does a really great job of telling the story. I will say, like, I spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours watching a bunch of different things, reading a bunch of different things. Each account seemed to be slightly different. Like, even based on this photograph, I think on the Wikipedia page it says they took one picture. As they were getting ready for the second picture, that's when the assistant noticed the ghost coming down the stairs, and they took the picture. I then read in a few other accounts where it was the third picture, the fourth picture, the fifth, so it's like, okay, so which picture are we talking, like, it's kind of one of those things, as the story gets told, it gets elaborated, shall we say. Which is not to say that it didn't happen, but, as often happens when people tell stories, they take some liberties, perhaps. Okay, so I'm just glazing with a little bit of white. I'm just gonna tamp down some of the brown I just put on here. I'm not gonna work on the outer glow at all. I think I'll leave those eyes kind of intense like that because it's kind of creepy, and it is a ghost, right? So I feel like if I've captured some creepiness in painting a ghost, then that's a win, right? Like if this painting gives me nightmares, then that's like the best thing I could ever have hoped for with this particular artwork. There are other paintings I've done which also give me nightmares, but not intentionally. So this will be nice to have a painting that potentially gives me nightmares, and because I set out to do just that. Like, my goal is to make it look like she's wearing a gown, right? And that's, I think I'm achieving that. If anything, I think I just need to make this kind of a little bit more even across. And I'm just going to keep on going back to these hands. Anywhere that I feel like needs just a little bit of an extra punch. Like these hands. Let's take a look at her again here. Kind of looks like she's a queen wearing a tiara or something. I don't mind that. This hand looks a little bit too bright now after I was trying so much to make it visible, and now it's almost a little bit too prominent. I think I'm going to glaze that back in a moment. And just if I do that, I might as well. Okay, well, I feel like I'm very, very close to being done. So I'm just gonna mute the microphone, glaze, and then I think we should be done. So let's take some more glaze. Get this on the brush. Just a little bit of white. Maybe a little bit more white. So I suppose the last thing that I ask myself is, do I need to make it any darker around the sides? I was hoping to be done, but now I'm just thinking, should I just take one last little bit of black and just push my blacks one more? Or can I live with it? I think I'm gonna do a little bit more. I think that works. It's it kind of nicely darkens things, and I keep this area up there because there might be a little bit of light upstairs, and give it a little bit more dimension that there's another space back there. But I think I'm just gonna darken these. I just want to blow this top corner is driving me. Okay. So, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Very weird painting. You know, again, I do think that darkening that I just did was also very helpful. It did give it even more drama. It might have been close to too much. I probably could have got away with not doing it, but as I often say, I'd much rather do it and recognize what happened and then do it differently the second time than just sit there and look at it for weeks and years from now and think about how, you know, coulda, shoulda, woulda, all that kind of stuff, right? That is weird. I did not... a year ago, I did not expect I'd be making paintings like this on a Saturday afternoon. But here we are. I'm all prepped for Halloween, just like Deborah was saying. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, you want to see more of this kind of stuff, or you want to learn more about how to paint, please like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. If you want to support the channel, you can share links with friends and family, post them on your Facebook or elsewhere. Take a picture of your painting, put it up on our Facebook group. What Facebook group? Join the Facebook group. There's a link in the description. It's the first thing in there below. Great, super supportive community of people, probably just like yourself, who are interested in getting better and better at painting. And through that Facebook group, I post all of each one of these episodes, because there's about 4 different series of paintings that I've been working on. And you can get some great feedback from other people as well as myself. In a couple of weeks, we're going to do another feedback episode. We're going to take a look at your version of today's paintings, or any other paintings you're working on. It doesn't have to be part of the class, and I'll tell you how you might be able to improve it, or maybe just a big old-fashioned congratulations, right? So, also, if you want to support the channel financially, you can leave a small contribution using the PayPal link in the description below, as well as if you want to do an e-transfer or send a check or anything. Contact me through the Facebook group or my emails on my website. All those links are below. Thank you, everyone, for joining me again today. And maybe keep a little bit of a light on tonight when you go to sleep, just in case the brown lady comes a-looking for you. Okay, everybody, good night. We'll see you on Tuesday when we paint Picasso's famous Peace Dove for International Peace Day. Have a good weekend. Good night. Ooh.